Without further ado, I'm um, I'm really glad to wrap up the year with today's topic from fault to fixes inside Curry's smart Reaper revolution. Really glad, especially that I'm going to be joined by Glenn Holbrook, the head of commercial operations, repairs, and reverse logistics from Curry's, and Hattie Lister, the associate vice president of utilities and retail from Vyntelligence. As we get into this conversation, quick wave of the hand, we'll get to know both of them very briefly. And before we do that, I want to share a little bit of why I believe this is an important topic and why we're getting into this. At the start of the year, when we check what is at the top of service leaders' agenda, we saw a big push towards growth and investment, and then tariffs hit, and might have been entirely because of that, or at least there was a strong correlation. But we saw a shift towards efficiency and automation. But a lot of the automation that we've seen applied in practice, and this was reflected at the Smarter Services Executive Symposium that we held in September, has been more around back office type of work, including summarization and the efficiency of searching, collecting some of the data, not necessarily in terms of making the experience more efficient. And I do believe that there's a way, but as we've gone through our research, we identify some gaps even within organizations that tell us that unless we tackle those first, it's going to be really hard to improve the customer experience and get the benefits that could come from that. So that just as a very quick introduction, I will say that today's webinar is going to be recorded, so you can watch it on demand. You can share it with your colleagues after the fact. Additionally, Vyntelligence has been kind enough to provide a couple of resources that you can use to learn more about the topic to further engage with them. And I do want to thank them for sponsoring this today's conversation. So let me spend just 5 minutes talking about some of that research that I was alluding to. And it did struck me that every year we conduct our KPIs and metrics survey at the start of the year. We engage service leaders from across industries for this, typically director and VP level plus. And one of the questions that we were asking was, what are the metrics that have gained and have lost the most relevance for you as you start your 2025? And self-service rate was the second metric in ranking that had lost the most relevance for 26% of service leaders. We go further into understanding what was motivating those leaders, and 84% of them were mentioned that their revenue targets had increased. And when we look at what are the things that they perceived as most critical to improve on in order to accomplish their goals, you can see the top three over here. It was field service operations, service parts management, and customer retention and growth. The first two in that list are things that if we were able to effectively conduct self-service resolution for customers and providing a good idea, we would actually have a more efficient operation in both of them. And by providing a positive experience, one where the customer can find a quicker solution, where the touch points are less, when they can trust the relationship that they're having, is a relationship that is likely to be a repeat relationship, and that gets us into the customer retention and growth. So I believe there's some level of misconception that self-service actually alienates um, the customers, and that has been true in poor implementations. But when done properly, I would strongly argue that it has the potential to hit both sides of the equation, to drive growth, to drive that customer retention, and to drive efficiencies in the delivery of service, not just in the direct instance, but also in how parts and the field service operations are managed. But then what gets in the way? And part of the research that we also do is understanding the perception of the frontline. And just wrapped up our Voice of the Field Service Engineer survey this in 2025, a month and a half ago. And two of the things that speak to me is that the time that technicians spend looking for information is the number two thing, number two element that they struggle with. And almost half of those same technicians say that the knowledge base has become easier to consume. Can we really expect customers who are not as intimately familiar as the frontline is to engage with the resolutions and the self-service if we're not making it easy for them to go through the journey? So this is a cautionary tale. And sometimes we stay at the information is there, and the frequently asked questions are there, and there's text-based support that is there. But just because it's available for access doesn't mean that it can be easily consumed. We see that 55% of the technicians say data is complete, but then you have to get into what's going to make it be utilized from being accessed to utilized. You got to trust it. And then you got to use it the way it was intended. You got to find yourself at the right place. And that requires clarity and simple processes, engaging people in the way that they know how to engage in their day-to-day. And ultimately, to be able to achieve the value. And this, to me, was the biggest call out, that only 3 in 5 technicians agree that available technology has made it easier to get the work done. And this is a decreasing trend. We were in the low 70% last year, barely above 60% this year. And finally, to wrap up this piece, I put up a poll on LinkedIn earlier this week as part of a teaser to our KPIs and metrics survey, but wanted to understand, what do service leaders see as their mandate for 2026? And efficiency and growth are leading the pack. Risk, grain of salt here. It's only 12 votes, a very small sample. The partial results that we have from the KPIs and metrics survey, which is currently in market, paint a very similar picture. And the thing that gives me some pause out of this is no votes, no love for predictability and the reduction of uncertainty. And that is, on one hand, we had a podcast earlier this year where we were understanding the perception of the CFO, and more than growth or efficiency, one of the quotes that I remember was, it's about reliability and the predictiveness of the cash flow, removing the uncertainty, because that is risk that the CFO needs to manage. Within service, as we have to speak the language of the CFO, increasing that predictability matters, and matters all over the service ecosystem. Field service, the buffers that we need to have for how many people we need to support the operation, how much inventory of spare parts, how much money is wasted on no-fault found trips, on logistics that are expedited, or material that is coming back, going towards a client and it's not going to be needed, above and beyond the dispatches themselves, which are costly and put the technicians at risk by spending more hours on the road. And all these things, it's an erosion on the things that we were talking about at the top, on margin, on the customer experience, and on growth. So because of this, because I believe reduction of uncertainty and improvement of the customer experience is so important, I want to welcome our panel back into the conversation. And I'll ask Glenn to walk us through a little bit of, first off, to provide the background on Courage for those that might be a little bit less familiar with it, and especially to learn about your journey as we then engage into an interactive Q&A. So Glenn, over to you.
Thanks, Gerardo. Hello everyone. My name's Glenn Holbrook. I am, as it said, head of commercial operations for our repair and return services at Currys. And for those that don't know, Currys in the UK is the UK's leading retailer of electrical goods, focusing on anything and everything from kettles, toasters, up to washing machines, fridges, large screen TVs. But today, specifically, we're going to talk to you about our video diagnostics and our field repair service that we have. So our field repair service was actually outsourced pre-2013 to a third party. So what I want to show you here is just the evolution of that field service and some of the key milestones within that. So in 2013, we did insource it. So brought in the whole operation, 2P'd over some of the engineers, and then started to grow our own engineering fleet. But the main change really all started to happen from 2020. So literally just before COVID unfortunately kicked in and ruined everybody's 2020, we actually brought in as a strategy our field repair process from our field delivery teams into our service operations teams. What that then allowed us to do was actually segregate that from the normal delivery side of the business and actually bring together our central repair operation that we have in Newark with our field repair and join up those that resource, that knowledge to try and drive an improvement in our field repair experience. The next two elements in 2021 and 22 are linked. So we have about 250 engineers out on the road. And from a domestic appliance perspective, not many of those have a diagnostics tool that you can plug in to get a result that tells you what's wrong and what we should do with the product to fix it. But what we do have is 250 engineers that every single day of visiting customers are seeing the faults and are replacing parts to fix those said faults. So in 2021, we implemented a tool to capture that data to understand what we'd gone to fix, what it was we were fixing, and what parts we used then to do that. We then took that information a year later, once we built up enough knowledge, and we created a tool for our call center teams to then input what the customer was telling them was wrong with the product, which would then give them an outcome of either tag these spares or maybe put it through for extra diagnostics with our second level engineer crew. And then because we'd managed to reduce the amount of spares we were sending out through those two things, we were then able to look at actually how do we make the engineers more efficient, because again, they cover the whole of the UK and Ireland. So how do we cover those engineers better? How do we get them so their driving time is minimized and we maximize the time in the customer's home? So we then went to localized spares distribution. So engineers would go to a locker, collect their spares for the day that was a lot closer than our 17 distribution centers we've got across the UK, which then made them more efficient. Over the next 2 years, we then started to explore, okay, we've fixed quite a few problems. And as you can see, we call it NPS, which is our Net Promoter Score. That is the customer's feedback on the jobs we've been to. We've gone through a journey and we've got it to 80 NPS points. How do we go a step further? So that next step further was joining the partnership with Vyntelligence to look at how can we bring in video technology to allow us to get closer to the customer's product without physically visiting. So that's the key bit of today's discussion, is what that technology has actually bought for us. And as you can see, we have pushed that on to 84 points plus within our NPS, and it does continue to grow. So I don't want to talk too much on this slide because it is just essentially showing you where that Vin service does fit into our existing process. So the yellow, depending on your eyes, the yellow and the purple was the existing processes. We have those second level engineers. We have a call center process where we're taking calls, and 50 to 60% of the volume was going through to those engineers. And all they had to go on that second 50% was the information captured by the call center in notes. So again, we all know a conversation that we can have one-to-one has then relayed to a third party, ends up a little bit like Chinese whispers. The information doesn't necessarily pass down in the same way. And one person's understanding of somebody's description is different to somebody else's. So it was, how do we get that information so that our colleagues who are doing that second level work have got the same information that our call center handlers had in the first instance? And you can see the lovely pink part there. That's where Vin slotted in very nicely. Took a bit of time, but very nicely slotted into that part of the journey.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for that, Glenn. Hattie, before we get into the Q&A, I don't know if there's anything that you'd like to add. I know you've been a part of the journey for a long time with Currys. So just wanted to see if you had any supplementary comments.
I mean, just to introduce myself, hi everyone, Hattie Lister. I've worked with Currys since the beginning. I think Glenn and I cooked up this solution together through various phone calls and then site visits on site to meet some of the field engineers and the team at Newark, who are a great bunch. I mean, I think I'll probably leave my comments to the kind of the Q&A where Glenn and I can come in and explain what we've done. But it was an incredibly exciting time for Vin and Currys, because Currys are the first in the UK as a retailer to take this capability and offer it out to their clients. And as Glenn was showing, that's worked really well for them on the NPS score. So it was a great meeting of two minds. For those that aren't in the UK, you probably can't understand how significant the Currys brand is across the region. Everyone knows it's got one of the best Instagram reps from the retail sector in the market. It's really quite famous. It's worth looking it up. So it was a brilliant meeting of two minds, of an industry platform that had total UK-wide usage in customers from our utility sector clients, and how could we very quickly deliver that video and AI capability into retail journeys, because the customers are different. The field engineers are relatively similar, but the customers have different expectations. So it was an exciting journey to go on. Thank you.
Thank you, Hattie. That's a very useful context, and it actually connects to the first of the questions that I wanted to touch on, which is that customer experience. Because in the results of our 2025 service leaders agenda, and we're about to launch the 2026 version, but a third of the respondents said that they had missed their targets for the previous year. And when it came to the metrics that they were seeing as most important to prioritize in order to achieve their targets in the following year, first and fix, service cost, and service revenue were at the top of the list. So you shared, Glenn, I'll start with you. You shared the NPS as the primary metric that you're using to track your progress. And again, congratulations, that trend is commendable. But wanted to understand a little bit more of why is it that that NPS sort of appears as your North Star over here, and are there any other KPIs that you're utilizing to control to drive direction towards these implementations?
Yeah, absolutely. So I suppose, just to quote you there, why NPS is our North Star is that everything we do from a service operations perspective is a cost. So within Currys as a business, we have a services team that sell the service. We then go and deliver it. So everything we do is a cost. To help drive and generate value, one of the things is, if you've got a good experience, more people are going to use it. So straight away, if you use that focus of, if the customers that we are visiting like what we do, they are going to tell others. So, and obviously in today's world, it used to be something like with every one person, they're going to shake 10 people's hands. But with the internet and everything that goes on with social media now, one person is touching 100 million people in terms of that experience, both good and bad. So that net promoter score was a really key indicator for us to say, actually, is what we are doing, what we may do may be good from a cost perspective, but if your customer experience is going down, you've got to make a lot more money against, or you've got to save a lot more money to drive that negative NPS. However, one of our other key metrics is written there on yours as well, is first time fix. So we have also seen our first time fix rate go at a similar kind of rate. So we now have a first time fix rate of 85 plus. We actually had some sites in the last couple of weeks achieve 90%, which has never been done before. So we've got 17 sites across the UK that manage our field services. And we had 3 sites out of the 17 actually achieve over 90%. Again, part of what we've launched with the video diagnostics is to see if we, well, not to see if we can, to make sure that we do drive that first visit fix. And part of that is actually by not visiting. So a great example we had right at the start of our work together, and it was actually one of our test jobs when we sent out some VINs to some customers blindly. We didn't tell them we were going to send it. They were our customers, so we were allowed to send the data. We sent out a VIN. They recorded their issue. They sent it back. And a customer had explained to the colleague on the phone that their washing machine door was locked and they couldn't get it open. They said exactly the same words in the video, but they were recording their machine. As they're recording their machine, a light flashed up. And as soon as the engineer saw that, which was in the first 5 seconds of the video, they knew that the customer put child lock on their washing machine. So previously, we'd have gone out maybe with a door lock replacement, perhaps a main board, because it could have been an electrical fault on the item. We might have gone out with 3 or 4 parts. We would have visited, we wouldn't have fitted those parts because the engineer would have got there and gone, it's child lock, and fixed it. But we'd have spent, and again, I'll make it up, £50 going, visiting to unlock that child lock issue. Whereas because we had the video, we were able to repair that over the phone, rang the customer, told them what to do, explain where they could find that information from so they can self-serve sort of in future and keep their tech working. But that then goes down not only as a first visit fix, but an extra saving because actually we didn't even visit to fix it.
Yeah, no, great story to connect the dots. And we have a question related to this, as I wanted to understand some of the examples of how that customer experience has changed and has driven the NPS to go up. Anthony Peters asks, what are some of the advantages of using the VIN technology versus just having the customer record and submit a video to a service provider? And I think this also has to do, as you were talking about your example, with the maturity curve, and there's a stepwise implementation of this. But Glenn, I'll go to you first, and then Hattie also give you a chance to comment on the difference between the technology that you're deploying and versus the customer simply submitting a video.
Quite simple for me. Having so the IT requirements for us to have built our own tool to even just store the information from a customer, i.e. a customer record a video, having a platform for them to then upload it to, for it then to be stored in a safe and secure way, for us then to be able to get access to that video for our engineers through our repair systems. We'd have already been using 4 or 5 systems to maybe make that happen. The beauty of what we've got in the partnership with Vin is they already have a platform that we simply used APIs to link into our existing. So whilst, yes, there's a cost there, obviously, from an external third party, it wasn't as big as the cost potentially internally because we would have had to essentially build the platform ourselves and do all that work. There's an element of the liability as well with the data side of things. You know, we can go to a third party, we can go through the due diligence on that as well to make sure they're secure. Whereas again, internally, we'd have had to pay to go through all that and create that safe server, etc. So that, I think it depends on the size of the business maybe, but certainly from a Currys perspective and the amount of customers we deal with, we're talking 4,000 customers a week use our field repair service to store, to take that data, to implement it into another system. Not only the cost, the time for us to develop that internally and get it into the program of work versus everything else Currys wants to implement from a technology perspective. I'd probably still be waiting. And that's not a slight on Currys' technical team, but obviously the size of the business and the other things we need to go after as a collective Currys, whereas by going to third parties, if I can make the pound note stack up against the solution, then it's a lot of barriers are removed in that way.
Yeah, that so Hattie, that's a hard act to follow, but I'm sure this is a question that you get all the time as well.
Yeah.
What is the difference? So what other elements would you point out?
Yeah, bro. I mean, Glenn's obviously nailed a really important point on the head there is our platform is ready to go, tested, can integrate in. A lot of Curry's customers probably wouldn't realize that they're not using a Curry service, which is brilliant. But Anthony, I think it's a brilliant question and one we get asked all the time because the actual user journey is Curry's doesn't just ask for a video. They have a wonderful, like, they've branded our platform and create a wonderfully easy to understand user experience that has little GIFs and photos to help the customer understand exactly what a useful video is. It has a literal guide that explains what it is you want to see, what they need to see, so that means they have a really high success rate of the customer sending the right video. Now, it's probably relatively simple when it comes to an issue with a washing machine, but you can ask customers to collect really quite complicated series of information around the home to enable more complex things, such as the install of a gas oven. There's a lot of information you need to know to be able to successfully install that, and by building good, clear, step-by-step guides of multiple snippets of video, Vin's able to collect that data very accurately for you. Now, I know we'll talk a little bit about the AI later as well, but again, Anthony, it's not just the video that Currys is using of our platform. There's our AI technology. And again, this is how we're able to move so quickly to Glenn is because we're specialized in creating that. And we use many different AI technologies and combine them together into one nice little package. There's things like where we're looking at what's happening in the video and we're listening to what's happening in the video and we're automatically summarizing that. So essentially, we're actually doing the first layer of triage that makes it even quicker for the Currys field engineers to
Mm.
look at it and be like, oh, yeah, that is something I can fix. Or as Glenn said, that isn't something I can fix, which is equally as important to understand. Another really good example, Anthony, is it's really useful for the Currys team to know exactly which washing machine or TV they're looking at. But unfortunately, the team that came up with the serial numbers wasn't so considerate to customers, and they tend to be about 10 to 15 a random series of letters and numbers written down. And through the platform, we're able to just digitize that for them. So
Mm.
again, we're not asking the customers to write it down. We're getting accurate data back to Currys, and it's a really nice, quick to use, quick and easy to use experience. So
Yeah.
Anthony, I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, great examples. And all of those we sometimes talk about how it's the micro moments that build up to a completely different experience. And for example, the capture of the accurate serial numbers is a great example of how those that long tail of things that can go wrong in the reporting of a service event. And to get a better context of our audience, there's actually a couple of polls that I'd like to launch right now to understand what is the context that our listeners are seeing. So the first, and Glenn, you mentioned the example of when what would have resulted in a no fault found had they not seen the light blinking. So for our audience, what percentage of your products returns end up being an NFF or a user? We'll leave it up for a couple of seconds and then we'll see the results. So let's reveal what we have. Nice. So I'm glad to see that no boats on the black hole where NFF is not tracked. I will say that for example, for service parts leaders, there was that missed misconnection and that interrelationship between the different metrics that Glenn you were talking about. That's not to be understated because it's very tempting to improve in one area, but at the cost or the expense of another because of simply lack of visibility that happens there. And just a quick follow-up, Paul, on that as well, if we could launch the second one. And I don't know if well, if the poll is not launching, I'll move on to the next question. But we'll be using these polls to as fuel for the conversation, both Hattie and Glenn. If you have any additional reactions, Hattie, just based on your experience with different customers, did those results from an NFF perspective surprise you?
I thought they were. I mean, it was great to see be a little bit low. I mean, often we actually find that when you really dig into it, people aren't able to track it in a kind of an accurate level as they want. That can be quite challenging. There's so much variation when it comes to engaging with customers and the types of services you're trying to provide, that when you nearly really get down to the nitty-gritty of it, it's quite tricky to work out what is the end result of what you're trying. But I mean, I think Glenn's probably better at answering that question when it comes to Curry's perspective, really.
Yeah, it depends on the category, and it depends on whether we're talking repairs or returns. So from a repairs perspective, 10 to 20% across all categories. But again, that's because a lot of the repairs we do, we have extended warranties on. So, obviously the longer life it's got, the more likely it is to have an actual fault to repair. Whereas you look at stock being returned in the UK, there's a 30-day window to return your product as change of mind and or faulty. And when you then we do a lot of refurbishment, so I'm also responsible for circularity within the Currys returns world, and we can see anywhere from, again, that 10-20% no fault found rate on certain products, but then you look at some computing products and it's up towards 70% no fault found rate. So it really does depend on the category, which is why for us, we have diagnostic solutions across a varying set of technologies and in different part channels in terms of our call center versus our stores versus our home delivery network. And actually, that the reason we've deployed these is because of the information we've gathered from a back end perspective when we've screened and refurbed these items to say, actually, we're taking products back that we shouldn't be bringing back into the business in the first place because they're not of the condition the customer's stating. So again, that's another reason why we've gone to a solution with Vin on the field repairs.
Thank you both for thank you both for that. And I apologize, I wasn't seeing the question earlier. It didn't pop up on my screen, but I see the results from the second poll on how is it that organizations are currently collecting diagnostic information from the customers before the technician arrives. And most of the time is the devil we know. It's the phone triage, it's the call center notes. Very little implementations yet on some alternatives that you've shared how they can change the customer experience, but it even puts the front line in a different position to be able to succeed, right? It provides them with better information. So, Glenn, coming back to you with this, as we look for demand, that there's this balance of do you want to drive efficiency, drive growth? Do you feel the need to modernize operations, reduce uncertainty, as I was talking about earlier? Can you elaborate? You already touched a little bit on this, but what has been the primary mandate for Currys, and especially how has it reflected itself in some of the additional strategic decisions you've made along the way? For example, on how the makeup of your call center or the flows that you have internally.
So I think as a retailer, we will always say we've got to get the customer experience right. But the reality is we've got to pay the bills. And from a service operations perspective, as I said earlier, we're a cost. We don't have the P&L for the actual sales of those services. So everything we do is a cost. So when we looked at this process with Vin, it was very much in mind of we need to visit less and we need to write off less products. So two very simple metrics. If we can visit less frequently, i.e. get our first visit fix rate up, and we can reduce the amount of products that we are writing off because of the cost of repair, then this will be a success. There'll be a success off the back of those two financial KPIs, because if we're visiting less and we're repairing it first time, customers will be happy with the service we're providing. Customers don't start a journey going, well, I want to have 3 visits because then I can get a voucher to go and buy a new product. That's not why they buy the service. They buy the service for the support that they know they're going to get to make sure it keeps their tech going. And if it does go wrong, they know they're going to be supported in the right way. So what we have seen is both of those metrics. We have seen our FBF rate improve, and it's gone very similar to our NPS. We are well over 85% of our jobs being first visit fix, and we've seen a reduction in our write-off rate. And actually, we've seen a bigger reduction in our write-off rate than we budgeted for when we launched it. Because the idea of having the video is and again, I'll give a bit of a vague example, but before we launched with Vin, even though we had that diagnostic solution, we may have gone out to a job or we may have gone to tag 10 parts to a job because it says it's not, a washing machine's not spinning. Well, that could be many things. It could be the drum that's gone. It could be the motor that's gone. It could be something to do with the filters. It could have something stuck. We don't know, because all the description we got from the customer to the CMC agent in the notes is not spinning. If we can't ring that customer and get hold of them, we then go and we tag a full new drum, so a whole kit, which can be anywhere, I think, up to about 8 to 10 parts. And then the cost goes over and it's a write-off. So rather than writing off straight away, we might go and visit as well. So we go and visit and we get there and go, yeah, definitely needed that drum. So now I'm going to tag the parts. So I've gone and visited without any spares because we weren't sure. It's like a bit of an investigation. We go and visit. We then go, yeah, we need all those spares. We tag those spares. Those spares are more than the value of the product or more than the write-off value. Therefore, we'll write it off for the customer because it's now more cost effective for us to give them that voucher. So we've spent, I'll go back to my £50 example. We spent £50 going and doing a visit that actually, if we'd have had the video, we knew we didn't need to do in the first place. So we actually underestimated massively what that was in the business case. And we have seen that be one of the main drivers. So I think in terms of like, what's the mandate? The mandate is to save money, but actually we can still be surprised by where we save that money. So we knew what the key categories were. We haven't had anything come up that we weren't expecting, but the performance has been much better in the write-off side of things, actually, than it was in the first visit fix rate, because our first visit fix rate has improved, not quite at the rate we'd hoped. But actually, it's been well and truly offset and covered by the fact that we underestimated the write-off side. So in terms of how that influences our decision, and it may be covered a bit later, but what we've learned with my team now, we've been doing sort of diagnostic solutions for this type of thing for about 8 years, is you've got to be flexible and adaptable, because as soon as you write down a forecast on a business case, it's wrong, because reality then comes into play once the stuff starts to actually flow through the process. But actually taking the time to understand before you go live everything you need to see, do, feel, hear, smell, touch, etc., is really important. And in that journey, as you know, we launched this year, but actually we started the conversation over about 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So whilst the partnership with Vin has been very good, very strong, we were very clear from the onset that this is going to take time, because we need to go through and get some data to back up what we want to do with you. And then we need to go through that. We need to then test that. We need to work through that logic. We need to get it wrong a few times. And actually, it's taking that time and making sure that you launch at the right time as well. to ensure that actually you get that customer experience right whilst ensuring you're saving that money.
Yeah, that there's a lot of great nuggets in what you just said. Part of I'll start with the last of knowing when you're ready and what internally what is it that you need to get in place, how to choose the right partner, definitely critical. And I really like that write-off example. And just to make sure I understand, so you're able to, if something needs to be written off because of video, now you're able to make that decision on the
Right.
spot.
Yeah.
Because you say the cost of the parts is going to be larger than the cost of writing it off, so you can make it on the spot. And by doing that, you're also giving the customer a solution on the spot. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
That's absolutely correct. So today a customer rings up and let's say they get a booking for next Monday. That's when we're going to come and visit and do the repair. But before we go and do that repair, we ask them to upload the video. They upload that video today. The engineer reviews it. They would have got their write-off voucher probably Tuesday or Wednesday because the engineer would have had to debrief the job on Monday. It would have then had to go through a process, whereas actually they'll get their write-off voucher tomorrow. So customer experience, it's not only about the fact that we've saved time because we've not gone and done a visit, but
Mm-hmm.
actually we've reduced that customer turnaround time by 4 to 5 days as well in terms of them getting a resolution. Plus, because the way we do it from a curry side is we issue them with a voucher for curries, they're going to go and invest in a product from us again. And then buy services again because they've got that security from knowing having that service plan. If anything goes wrong, we're there to help.
Yeah. Great, great. It's the double whammy. You're being more efficient internally, but that better experience, it also drives it is what drives retention. It's the reputation, it's the growth driver. Do you see something similar, Hattie? Or do you see in terms of the implementations that you do more of a push towards efficiency or growth as a primary driver?
Um, I mean, it it was so exciting when Glenn first started talking about the like improvement in the ability to write off. I mean, I think taking a step back of like what is the primary focus and purpose of Vin. Like as a business, it's to make things simpler, faster, and easier and safer for our customers, colleagues, and contractors, right? It's not, I know we're talking about customers using it, but it's not just customers that need to have a brilliant experience. They need to be motivated to use the platform. There has to be benefit for everyone at every stage, kind of in the life cycle journey of providing a service around an asset. Now, as Glenn has said, it has to pay for itself. So it has to be extremely measurable when it comes to outcomes. And luckily, when you embed video and AI into your processes, it literally enables you to change the way you do business. So often has very striking impacts very quickly with your operations. It's just we were very successful with Currys because they were so laser focused. They understood their problem really well, which was incredibly easy for us to then focus in and say, right, if that's your problem, if we build the solution in this way, we'll measure this outcome because we know from other industries that will improve right first time and enough. And then we will see what happens. Because video changes so much, you then start to see and identify all of these other ways that you're bringing benefit to the business. And luckily, Currys are agile and able enough to kind of pick that up and then use that as a measurable outcome or use that data in another future way. It's incredibly valuable, I would say, Glenn, for you as an organization to have a really good view of what assets you have out in your customers and what parts are included in those as we look to, I know you guys are driving way more towards being environmentally friendly, where you're trying to drive towards fixing rather than, just writing products off for any reason. And this data that we're looking at for just for one current fix is going to have so many other different areas of value in the future as you build that data and knowledge bank around the assets, how they're performing, their age, where they are in the UK, and what their potential value is. So sorry, that might have been a little bit rambled, but it's not uncommon for us to see total transformation in the way that you can do your operation and therefore the value drivers that can come out of it.
Mm.
It's just really useful to be able to have the open conversation between, Vin and Currys to say, right, what is this? Great, let's jump on that and let's flex and try and maximize and push that value more. It's exciting in the existing use cases and for the future as well.
Yeah, indeed. It creates a foundation that you can continue to build on. And one of the benefits that we haven't touched on, and there was a question in the group that I think relates to this,
Yeah.
is the impact on the remote support and the field service agents. And this is an area where we typically see a lot of friction, a lot of finger pointing that can happen of whenever a technician gets sent to something that ends up being a no fault found, especially if it's very simple, or if they get the wrong parts because it was not accurately diagnosed, then there's disappointment with the remote support. And remote support, our data tells us that they frequently feel exposed. There's a large proportion of contact center agents that feel that they do not have enough information to effectively deal with the responses. So, couple of questions here, Glenn, for you. First off, have you seen a shift in the relationships, and specifically about the video implementation? There was a follow-up question from Anthony on how is it that the videos are being analyzed? Is it somebody at the contact center agents? Is it an engineer? Is it an AI agent? So how are those mechanics working?
First part, in terms of the relationship piece, you're absolutely right. When the team came under the service operations in 2020, the feedback straight away was that the call center aren't very good at diagnosing issues and seeing what's wrong, which is where our journey started, really. And it kind of links back to the previous question, but you can't just jump into technology. It doesn't matter what the technology is, whether that's a fridge or a laptop or a mobile phone. Going straight to a technology solution isn't necessarily the right thing to do. You've got to understand your problem first. So that's 2-3 year period where we were gathering data from the engineers was really initially to remove the need for knowledge from our call centers. So all they needed to be able to do was translate the customer's fault into a selection of faults, and then it would give them an outcome, tell them what to do. And we control those levers because we can move them either into second. So, for example, if it's a certain fault type, we'll always move it into second level, because that type of fault, we can, in our data, we can see that when a CMC colleague was selecting it, our first visit rate, and again, I'm making this up, but our first visit fix rate for physical damage was 50%. So to counteract that, we said if they select physical damage, we want them to move the job to level 2 so that we get an engineer to validate the fault. This is obviously pre-VIN. So all of that work was, one, to give us that diagnostics information, but it was to improve that relationship and actually say to the engineers, the data that is now being used to tag the spares to do the repair all comes from you, because we're taking your debrief information in the customer's home. What was the fault? What part did you use to fix it? Have you captured the right serial number, rating, the rating plate of the product? Because again, you have different version numbers within white goods. You can have one washing machine that's got 10 different versions, which means it's got 10 different bill of materials, which may have different parts in them, all doing the same kind of job, but you need the specific one from that version number of that bill of materials. So straight away, we were able to actually give more ownership to the engineers. And that's actually reflected over the last 5 years in our field repair team. They always had very good engagement in terms of employee satisfaction scores, but they have gone from high 70s to the last, don't want to do them a disservice, I think in the last 4 surveys, over 90 points on ESAT within our field repair team. That doesn't happen if you're not getting the core elements of their job right. So that's, for me, that answers that question. It actually wasn't the VIN element that fixed that relationship piece. it was getting that diagnostics journey right first. And we went very manual. It's essentially creating a data set and then using that data set to drive what the outcomes are. Then going to bringing in the video technology, the engineers that were doing the second level work, who were still getting frustrated by the CMC because they're not capturing the right information, etc., that's where we improved their experience. So instead of having to maybe make 4 or 5 attempts to get hold of a customer, they've got a video they can watch. And when we started, we were at something like a 20% uplift success rate in terms of videos being uploaded. But we went through and worked, I think we did about 3 or 4 different iterations of the Vin customer journey. But we also did about 7 iterations of our CMC scripting, what they told the customer, what information did they pass over. And we're now at 80–85% success rate on uploading videos. So going through that journey with the second level piece was important, because we don't just want to give them technology and go, there you go, you've got what you asked for. It needs to be right. It needs to work. It needs to do what they're doing. So to answer the question in the chat, it is actually they are field engineers that we've made a decision as Currys to take them off the road. And they spend their day diagnosing the videos and tagging the spares for those specific jobs. So they're still diagnosing. They do still go out and do the odd repair. They'll get routed out to make sure they're staying up to date with the technologies. But actually, from a cost perspective, it was as cost effective to remove them from the road and still have them paid as engineers to do that diagnostics. And I know there's a question about AI. I don't know if we'll have time, but so I'll quickly touch on it now. But where we want to get to is actually utilizing the information from Vin, utilizing the information from our debrief in our jobs to then say that when a customer reports X, Y, and Z in their video, we know it's this fault for these parts. So let's just take them through a self-serve journey rather than bring in a call center or waiting to hear from an engineer that's watched the video. Then the stuff that we actually watch is where we've got a new product with a new fault that we need to validate before we send them out. So we reduce that requirement for having bums on seats, for better want of a phrase, to actually look at those jobs, and we direct the jobs to the right skill set.
That's an incredible storyline, and it says a lot that that you're doing this in a logical way, that building that foundation and saying when is video going to add value, when it's something else, and I just want to call out that the improvements on that employee experience, that's not nothing. The biggest challenge that we frequently hear about is, well, we can bring in the technology, but we don't have enough people and we're losing the right talent. So using technology to improve engagement, and therefore to improve retention of the talent that that you have, it is a lot of value, and it's a massive engine in order to be able to drive that ongoing customer experience. So yeah, great story. Hattie, especially on this last part, I want to get your take as well on what's next, because you teased about how what Curry is doing right now is creating such a strong foundation. Where does AI come into the picture, and what are some of the possibilities that are out there?
There we go, take myself off mute. There are so many, and we could take it in so many different directions. I think what was really interesting at the beginning of the call is how you said that enabling self-service had gone down the ranks so much. And I think that's probably partly because of how much dumb self-service people have attempted, where you're just trying to get customers to work stuff out themselves and go through horrific, unintelligent chatbots that guide people through to self-service options and not actually tackle the challenge in an intelligent way. So I think what partly Glenn was, trying to envisage there is, if you have the platform that can structure the unstructured like engagement through the video, where you get all of that insight on the product, the problem, the challenge, working out whether it's an issue of someone not knowing how to use the product versus whether it's broken versus whether how likely you are to actually be able to fix that. If you can then digitize that and you have your knowledge of what's the next best thing to do, you can just automate that response to the customer. And because it's intelligent, it will be accurate and useful, and they'll use it and they'll love you for it. Like if you look at where the public are going, is like, I do not want to call anyone ever. Like calling someone is an absolute task for me.
Hmm.
I need to be able to do it whilst I'm multitasking 8 different things at once, and I need to just quickly point, shoot, describe, and then the system can work it out for me. But if I think for 1 minute it's not based on something intelligent, then I would never trust it again. So what we'll be looking to do at Vin is taking, further working on the AI to be able to diagnose and structure even more complex challenges through the use of video and enabling customers to describe things accurately, and then sending in questions automatically to them if they haven't showed you the right thing. You can encourage someone to describe the problem more if you ask them the right questions to then extract the next layer of insight, which then gives you even more chance to say, aha, I know the right thing for you to do. Imagine if you could just drop them down a video that said, you just need to replace the seal on your washing machine. Here's a video to do it. You could buy the part from Currys or someone else. Here's the tool to do it. And for someone that wants to do that, that would be the most exciting experience and convenience, and would mean you'd keep going back to them because it would be really, really useful. And I mean, there's even so much more we could focus in when it's looking at kind of automating the quality of the assessments of the quality and the safety of field engineers in the field. But I think we might
Hmm.
struggle, literally run out of time. So I just focused on the customer side there.
Yeah, no, no, that's great, but that paints a very exciting vision for the path that is ahead. And Glenn, just to get your final comments, because as we talked about, there's a lot of scar tissue that might be out there from past implementations, the
Yeah.
dumb implementations, as Hattie accurately described. Any final lessons that you'd like to share with our audience today, or any
Yeah,
final
I think that,
message?
yeah, that I mean the obvious one is take your time. Everyone's always in a rush, as I said earlier, in a rush to jump to technology. It's not always the right solution. There may be a more manual solution that drives more benefit. Because again, life's not about removing people from processes. It's about implementing the right process that gives you the most out of it. But the key thing is really, and I might make Hattie blush here a little bit, but it's about developing partnerships. So the way that I've managed all of our diagnostics tools and vendors is actually we're here to build something together. This isn't Currys as a customer expecting this and this and this to be delivered. If it doesn't happen, then we're walking away. It's actually, we've got an idea. We kind of had an idea of what we wanted video to do. And Vin already had a platform. So the easy thing was for Vin to do would have gone, well, this is our platform, this is how it works. And the easy thing for us to say is, well, if you're not going to do it our way, we'll walk away. So having a relationship with the partner as a partnership rather than a client to customer, etc., for me is the biggest win, because we started this journey without sharing any sort of financials or anything, but we started this journey as we're going to invest some money. So we're asking you to do the same. This is what we want to try and achieve. And the biggest thing is we were honest from the start of how long it was going to take. So I said to Hattie when we've had that very first conversation to implement, from the point of this very first conversation, we're looking at probably 18 months. And the likelihood of us getting any cash to do anything in a big way is probably a year away, because we've got to spend that time proving what it is we want to do. And I've done that with every partner. And if they run out the door straight away, they're not the right partner. Luckily, Hattie and Vin stayed well and truly inside the door, and we were able to build a great relationship. So, and that's been the beauty so far, is that we've introduced things into Vin that they've not done before. And Vin have come to us and said, well, actually, we've got this, this, and this, which we didn't even think of. And when you're in a partnership, you get more of that than just a client to customer relationship, because if it's client to customer, you get the off the shelf and here's what it does, and there you go, and there's the cost, and let's hope it delivers what you want. In a partnership, you get the Okay, that's off the shelf, but you've got lots of smart people behind you. What else
Mm,
can they do?
yeah.
So they're the key things for me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Great message. Great way to wrap up the a year of webinars. I'll add just a quick takeaway that I got from you is also to think innovatively about the challenges that you have, because when the technicians felt like they were not getting the right information and all, many will turn to how do we collect more data? How do we train the call center agents better? How do we bring more talented technicians, a higher profile of engineers? And there's more than one way to skin a cat. And
Yep.
by bringing video in this case, you were able to keep your teams and actually make the teams, the customer, the financial sheets all move in the right direction. So challenging our assumptions and the way that we've always done things and giving what's possible out there a chance is definitely something that we have to continue doing as we head into 2026. Thank you very much to both Glenn and Hattie. Reminder that today's webinar was recorded, so it's available for you to revisit and reshare. I want to wish, first off, thank you to both of you for joining this conversation. Wishing you and everybody who joined great end of the year 2025 and an exciting 2026. We hope to continue seeing you and have a great day.
Oh, thank you for hosting. Merry Christmas, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Merry Christmas.